Hello friends, in this video let's discuss different ways of effective information of the material when studying. But if you are watching me for the first time, I should introduce myself. I'm Nick, I'm an English teacher, and if you want to improve your English or pass some international English exams, you're welcome, you can contact me. There are different ways of studying and learning, and like when I first came across the learning pyramid by Bethel Maine of the National Training Laboratories, I mean this one. Well, it appealed to me at first because according to it, the best way to learn something is to teach the others, whereby you will retain up to 90% of information you're studying. In the meantime, you can Google this learning pyramid and see if it appears valid to you or not really. So it's Learning Pyramid by Bethel Maine. Sure. Teaching the others gives you the best edge in terms of memorizing the information for the future use. Well, you know what? I don't know about that because meaning like the best learner should be the teacher. Well, I have doubts because to teach, you don't have to learn everything by heart, or it doesn't mean that you are a master of something or at something if you teach it. Well, a good teacher and a good practitioner of like in the field are two different people. Let's take businessmen for example. There are very successful, immensely successful businessmen who don't need to teach anyone and who are making good money in their market or in their local niche, for example. Whereas a professor of business, even though it's an MBA professor, maybe not very good at business himself because he just learned the book, he memorized it. So what is the best way? Of course, it's not only by teaching the others, but the creators of this learning pyramid probably mean that to teach the others, you have to know the subject. You have to kind of know the ropes. And, well, yeah, in general, it makes sense. But I would say that's a big generalization. Okay, let's continue step by step. According to the learning pyramid theory, we learn up to 75% of the material by practice doing. Well, that's again, I would question this approach. If it is an average retention rate, well, if I practice doing cooking, I may remember it maybe better because this is like the sequence of ideas. If your friend is helping you to cook, or for example you together with your friend or a soulmate are attending a culinary course, so of course you are going to learn better by practicing it, by actually doing it. But practice doing what? If it is I don't know, a physical exercise class, or if you are a sports student, of course by practicing you're going to improve your skills, but like there are things you cannot practice immediately. Again, in general it makes sense, but the numbers are strictly not true. Okay, let's continue further. Discussion. By discussion, we learn up to 50% of the given material. Well, I doubt that, because for myself, for example, to understand some topic better, I need to kind of like make a structure, make the relationships of these objects of some specific topic in my head. So what is the relationship between them? How do they correlate? And by discussing it with someone, well, only after I already know this material and I can start applying it. Well, so I wouldn't say that this is the way to learn. This is the way to perfect memorization or to practice. Again, if it is a child. There is one way of learning, because children acquire language. They do it like this, whereas adults largely learn language, meaning they learn rules step by step. They do not acquire it because it's a different way. Hi Natalia, thank you for liking my video. So can we say that both children and adults have the same retention rate of the material which they discussed, which is 50%? Well, in some case it may be 90, but in the other case it may be 0 or maybe 1 or 2% if the material is unclear. So you want to, according to Bethel Maine, the average is 50%. Well, you know what? One person who is as tall as 6 feet, and the second person who is a dwarf, and from the like he's an elf probably, from some fairy tale by a Norwegian author. So he's 1 feet tall, and the tall guy, maybe LeBron James, or maybe it is Michael Jordan, so who is really tall. So put them together, and on average, you're going to have like 4 feet tall guy. So how is this helpful? Sorry, it doesn't make much sense. Let's continue with this learning pyramid. According to it, up to 20% of the learning of the material being learned is going to be retained if it is audiovisual. Well, seriously, this is something wrong here. When we, for example, do a listening task, I mean at an English class, or when we write down the data from a radio program, for example, we overhear something important, we want to write it down, and like after doing that, we just remember 20%. Like how? If I write it down, then I remember 100% because it's there on paper. But if, for example, I don't write when I see or hear this information, so I'm, well, only 20%. Again, it is how much attention the student is paying at the class. Is he or she present? Is he or she focused on the task at hand? Well, that's the question, not how much in terms of percent. Is it like if you are going to remember it or not? And again, according to the way of testing, if it is the beginning of the academic year, chances are that by May, by the end of the academic year, you're gonna forget everything unless you practice it at least for 7 to 9 times in different settings, using dialogues, listening, and then practicing with a group, and all types of practice if you are an English student. But saying that you're gonna remember only 20% if the information is audiovisual. Hello? Don't agree. Okay, so the next step here is reading. When I read something, I remember only 10%. Well, again, my dear friends and colleagues, there are different types of reading. Okay, just for a starter. So one, we read leisurely for just time pass and like for the escapism purposes. For example, if we read The War and Peace by Tolstoy, we do it in the evening or before going to sleep. Whenever I open such a huge book, I immediately want to sleep, so I never have insomnia. Oh, goodbye insomnia. And there are different types of reading, like the other type is scanning. To make a summary. For example, you're a TOEFL student and you want to make a summary to better understand the text, to answer the questions correctly and quickly. So it's a different type of reading, and saying that you're going to remember only 10% of this information is just not true. More than that, having studied TOEFL reading for quite some time, maybe for 5 years or so, very closely, because I think I practiced all TOEFL material there is by that time, and many texts, like I practiced with a dozen of students, so I can recall them instantaneously. So saying that I remember 20%, well, excuse me, but I can recall most of these reading passages without even hints. But if I reread them again, I will almost fully reconstruct them. So what is 20%? If you don't like my points of view, you can say that yes, it is again average, but what does average has to do with a real student who is reading or who is audiovisual? So saying that by reading the material the learner is going to retain only 10% is saying that the sky is blue. Well, for some people it may be blue, but for the others it may be gray. Take the colors that women can make out. They, for example, instead of violet, they say it's like. Even I have no idea how women call these colors. So instead of red, they may say like it's whatever. But I hope you got my point. And finally, by only lecturing, the teacher may achieve up to the 5% retention. So this is the most ridiculous piece of content I've ever came across, because seriously, if we only are able to remember 5% from the lecture, so why would we ever attend any lectures? Huh? Tell me. Have you ever attended any lectures? Well, as for me, as a university student, most of my classes were lectures. So that's what we were doing. So we were attending lectures. And now the learning pyramid is saying that, you only will retain 5%. Seriously. So if that was true, why would the educational institutions all over the world deploy this technique in teaching, essentially? So I have a problem with this approach, as you see. So there are different ways that are involved, which when we come to to successful information retention, to successful instruction. And when I Googled it, I learned that the harshest critics of this pyramid of learning are Valerie Strauss, who had published her article in the Washington Post, and she instead suggests that the retention rates vary according to what type of material. So is it just a plot of the movie, or for example it's a highly sophisticated topic essay on chemistry. Also, it has to do with the age of learning subjects. So whether it is a teenager or whether it is a middle-aged person or a senior citizen, the retain rates are going to be slightly different, especially when different material is involved. Okay, so what are the other things that affect the material retention? Well, it is the settings of the instruction. If it is a university class, or it is an online laboratory, or some kind of self-help group, in all of these settings, the retention is going to be different, I'm sure. Just recall your own study experiences when you studied at school, within, like as a part of the class, and then in the evening as a part of some informal education, like leadership courses or financial literacy courses. It was a different professor, different way of instruction, and of course a different personality. I don't need to tell you that the personality of the teacher really matters. If it is he or she is inspiring, then of course the student is going to be omnipresent. He or she is going to pay a lot of attention and trying to do the task as quickly as possible. What are the other ways to improve the retention level? Well, it's of course common sense suggestions, like improve your sleep, because when you are aware and when you're not thinking of oh my god, I would like to drink coffee, I hate myself, I hate my life, well, it's naturally, I don't need to tell you that your learning ability is diminished in this case. Well, also, many see the study process as memorization. Well, you know what? Today, in the era of Google, you don't need to be a library of material inside your head, okay? Because most exams test something else. Even if it is TOEFL or IELTS, they do not test how many words you remember, but how many of them you can use, you can actually apply in your writing, in your speaking and all. So it's not about just memorizing many things. Well, that's pretty much all I wanted to say on the topic of learning pyramid. Well, in general, I agree that by teaching the others, you improve. For example, I can remember myself, like, where was I like 8 to 9 years ago in terms of English? Well, I was like in the middle of nowhere, I would say, because before trying to explain things, I thought I was like, oh yeah, I'm very good. And after the first evening of teaching, I understood, oh my goodness, this is all, it's a very, very bad situation. I have to learn again. And by continuous recollection of this material in my head, constantly applying it in practice and explaining it to the people of different backgrounds and different ages, I evolved as a teacher and an English speaker, so I can speak now non-stop. However, I think it's I should cut it. No, I love talking, but you know, thank you for watching. Especially if you watched up to this point, I think you're a very patient person. Thank you, really. Also, sharing is caring, so don't you please find it difficult to like this video and share if you think somebody is going to benefit from it. So cheerio and stay put.